$1 million is the magic number people dream of reaching. But if you're grinding away at work and it still feels like it's impossible to achieve, you're not alone. In today's video, I want to talk about how many Americans actually have $1 million by the time they retire, and 3 things you can start doing today to reach that number faster. So first, how much do people typically have in their retirement accounts, like their 401ks and Roth IRAs, by the time they retire? In the US, most people retire by the time they're 65 to 74 years old. And according to a 2022 study, the average retirement account balance was around $609,000. Adjusted for inflation, that's around $700,000 in 2025, which seems like a pretty good chunk of money. But the problem is that number is heavily skewed by the ultra wealthy. A much better representation of the people, the non-bourgeoisie, is to look at the median retirement account balance, which actually sits around $200,000 or $228,000 adjusted for inflation. So this means that half of Americans retire with less than $228,000 in their retirement accounts. But, and this is an asterisk, retirement accounts are only a small part of the big financial picture. Because for most people, right, we all have money and wealth outside of just our retirement accounts, outside of our 401ks and IRAs. They got houses, we got brokerage accounts, we got saving accounts, and some of us have businesses. So a better question is, how many Americans are net worth millionaires? The latest data we have on this is from the Federal Reserve Study of Consumer Finances, again from 2022, which we're gonna adjust for inflation. Going down the list, the median net worth for American households from 18 to 34 years old is about $39,000. Adjusted for inflation, that's around $44,500 in 2025. From ages 35 to 44, the median net worth goes up to around $135,000 or $146,460 adjusted for inflation. Oh, and also remember, this is the median household net worth, so generally that's like 2 individuals. From 45 to 54 years old, about $247,000, otherwise $268,000 adjusted for inflation. By the pre-retirement years, so around 55 to 64, the median net worth is roughly $364K or $395K adjusted for inflation, which is still pretty far off from $1 million, but hey, there's still some years left. Now, in the retirement zone, and this is between 65 to 74, by the way, this page is blank, the median household income is $410,000, otherwise around $445,000 adjusted for inflation. Once we get over 75 years old, the household net worth dips down a bit, probably because retirees are spending down their savings, but it goes down to $335K or around $363K adjusted for inflation. So based on these numbers adjusted for inflation, most retirees between 65 and 74 have around $228K in their retirement accounts and around $445K in their total net worth wealth, meaning they have around $217K in other assets like their houses, their regular brokerage accounts, or saving accounts and stuff like that, which is pretty interesting because the median price for a house nowadays is over $400,000, which should theoretically, boost these numbers up because about 80% of people over 65 do own a home. But you gotta remember, all right, we're talking about net worth. Net worth is assets minus liabilities, so you do need to subtract things like credit card debt, their mortgage, their car loans, and other stuff. The point is, even at its peak household median net worth, right, most Americans do not have $1 million. So if it is so rare, how many people actually have $1 million? According to a study by the UBS, there are around 60 million millionaires around the world. And what's interesting is that that number has been increasing drastically. In the year 2000, which feels like forever ago, there were only about 14.7 million millionaires worldwide, so the total number of millionaires is just 4x in the past 20 years. Now, specifically in the US, and this is gonna be a tongue twister, so wish me luck please, there are about 22 million millionaires, which accounts for 38% of all millionaires around the world. And although the US has the most millionaires in the world, it only accounts for about 8% of the US population. Right? Not too much. But what if I told you that there are things that you can start doing today to be part of that illustrious millionaire club? As someone, and this is a humble brag, who spent the last decade in the finance and money space with a degree in economics and a career on Wall Street, I've noticed 3 common patterns and traits that most millionaires do that you can easily start adopting today. But first, very quickly, I do want to talk about something that I come across a lot in the comments and messages. Basically, people saying, oh, $1 million is nothing because of inflation and yada, yada, yada. And while $1 million today isn't quite like what it was for our parents or our grandparents, come on, let's be real. $1 million is still a lot of money. Even if you can't buy a private island with it, it's still a huge milestone for financial freedom. All right, so the 3 common traits, all right? So number 1, most people, they think that millionaires are these like young Lamborghini driving influencers throwing cash in Miami and partying at the clubs thanks to movies and social media. But the reality is actually a lot more unexpected. Most millionaires that I know are what I call the stealth wealth type, okay? They're not flashy and they don't feel the need to flaunt their money because, as Tywin Lannister once said, any man who must say, "I am the king," is no true king. So the first thing you need to adopt if you want to be a millionaire is to get a clear alignment on what you want to spend money on based on what you actually care about and not what society or social media tells you to care about. You can do this by setting up this thing called a money map to kind of guide you in the right direction. It does require a little bit of work in the beginning, but it kind of makes the whole process a lot easier. Do this on any spreadsheet or honestly even on the back of like an envelope. It just requires you to know your 4 C's. The first C is your capital, right? This is your income. This is how much you take home in your paycheck every time you get paid. Next, you need to split and categorize your expenses into 2 buckets. The first one is your core, so this is the next C, which should be about 60% of your take-home pay. These core expenses are things that you are obligated to pay, right? This is your rent, your mortgage, your utilities, your groceries, and your transportation. The next bucket is your choice bucket, and 20% of your capital goes here, ideally less. This is where you choose to spend money on things to make your life more comfortable, like Netflix or dining out or $15 salads for lunch. Once you completed your first 3 C's, this is when you want to calculate your compound bucket. And this is where the actual wealth is created, right? This is everything dedicated here is for your future wealth. This includes your retirement accounts, your investments, your education fund, anything that will help you compound your long-term wealth. My money map tracker already does all these calculations for you automatically. So if you do want that, you can get it in the link down below for free. Once you have all your 4 C's, you want to follow the money map to the T. The point is, this is all about creating a plan to help you reach your goal. If you don't get this right, then it's going to be nearly impossible to get there because, like with anything, right, you can't reach your destination if you don't know 1, where you're starting, or number 2, how to get there. Number 2, it's not about how you start, it's about how you finish. So I didn't grow up with money, right? I didn't have a silver spoon in my mouth. I had chopsticks. My parents came to the US with just a couple dollars, like the quintessential immigration story. And one of my core memories that I had, because we didn't have money, was my parents would always buy me clothes that were like 2 times the size of what I would normally wear at that age, because 1, it saves money, and number 2, I'm gonna grow into it, so it's gonna save more money. I don't have to buy new clothes. And now that I've achieved financial freedom, I'll always come across these comments on YouTube or Instagram or whatever, where people will say, oh, it must be nice to have rich parents. Bruh, really? And yes, while it is 100% true that some people are born with money, right? They're born into wealth and they have easier lives, studies actually show that 79% of millionaires did not inherit their wealth. And instead, they grew up in middle-class households or lower income households. And one thing I think a lot of people don't realize is that one of the most consistent and lowest effort ways someone can become a millionaire is by investing. And whenever I say this, people will always say, oh, I wish I had enough money to invest, or I don't have enough money to even start investing. But I think it's because most people think, incorrectly I might add, that you need thousands or tens of thousands of dollars to invest, which isn't true at all. I started investing with just $20 from my Chinese New Year red envelope money. For example, let's just say there are 2 brothers, right? John and David, generic names. John starts investing when he's 25 years old, right? He starts investing $5,000 a year for 10 years until he's 35 years old. Meaning he invests a total of $50,000 and then he's like, yo, I'm gonna stop contributing and just let these investments grow. On the other hand, David waits until he's 35 years old to start investing. This is, remember, right when John stops. David then contributes $5,000 a year for 30 years until he's 65. Meaning he invests a total of $150,000, all right? 3 times more money than his brother John. If we assume both brothers earn the same 10% annual return on their investments, who do you think ends up with more money? John. Even though he contributed $100,000 less money and he stopped investing 30 years earlier. John's account grows to over $1.4 million by the time he's 65. But David, despite investing, again, 3 times more money, his account only grows to about $910,000. The point is, investing early is way more important than how much you have to invest. And if you want to learn how to start investing and what to invest in, then check out this video where I break everything down step by step for beginners. I'll also leave a link down below. Number 3, if you are not where you want to be yet, the number one thing you want to focus on is this formula. Capital minus core minus choice equal compound. The trick is to get the compound number as high as possible. And again, this is from the money map tracker. It's gonna do this calculation for you automatically. I'm gonna leave a link in the description down below, get it for free. A big problem I see in the money space is that a lot of money experts will tell you to save everything, every single penny you have, and to deprive yourself from enjoying life, right? But I don't think this is a sustainable approach. I don't. Remember when I said that you need to get a clear alignment on what you actually care about and not what society or social media tells you to care about? Well, this brings us back to the choice bucket section. This is where you want to make that super clear distinction, where you spend money on things you love. You splurge on things that you love. But the caveat is you also need to ruthlessly, real mean looking, you need to cut your spending on things that you don't love. Like if you don't care about watches, why the heck are you dropping hundreds if not thousands of dollars on a fancy watch to show off at work? For example, I love to travel for adventure, meaning I will happily splurge on things like paddleboarding in a volcanic crater in Guatemala, or riding horses to see an ancient underground city in Turkey. But I don't care too much about fancy clothes, meaning I will barely spend any money on clothes, which is why I love thrifting. So, in the choice bucket, all right, pick 2 things that you don't give a crap about, that you don't care about, and then severely cut the budget for those things. Maybe you generally don't give a crap about cars, but you bought a really fancy one because your neighbor did and you feel like you should. Figure out a way to get rid of your expensive car and just buy a cheaper one without a car loan. The point is, you've got to figure out ways to increase the gap between your capital and your core and choice buckets. And once you do, you can add more fuel to the compound bucket to invest and compound your wealth. How can you increase this gap? Watch this video next where I break down exactly how to save $10,000 so fast that it feels illegal.